Chapter 8. After driving my VW van north across the Golden Gate Bridge to a section of the bay favoring windsurfing, I hauled out my board. After being out on the water a while, I felt that divide between myself, my personal artificial identity, and the rest of life out there appearing to disappear. Yet still now knowing out of it sooner or later, I would have to return to my pad to face the music. Did I have the cojones to reclaim my destiny or continue to make a further sham out of it? That damn canvas. Why did I let Jean Claude set me up like that? Suddenly it flew back in my mind. Packing up my gear, stripping out of my wetsuit, I went back into the water in my skivvies. Chills stung me sober to the bone. The canvas with its amorphous clusterfuck disappeared. But after slipping on some clothes, firing up the van, and starting back toward the bridge, I could feel its agitation growing. By the time I hit Highway 101, it was a roaring buzz in my ears. My heart pounding. I headed north instead of south. Catching the Richmond Bridge exit, I thought maybe to visit Delilah. Page 150. The image on the canvas sitting so innocently on the easel sent a chill up my spine. Thinking of calling Jean Claude, I considered asking him to go over to my pad and get rid of the whole damn affair. After crossing the Richmond Bridge, I merged with 508. Traffic moving at a good pace, I hooked up with the 808 to blaze past the Oakland Coliseum. Then, slowed by some road construction, I found night falling with a light rain. The droplets diffused the orange flashers as I eased along a one-lane temporary detour. To the west, bay waters blackening danced with pinpointed lights of watercraft. Reflecting on it, avoiding thoughts of Delilah, I flashed on sidestepping a drunken breakdown in the arms of a weaker sex while pulling into a gas station for a payphone. Rain fell, increasingly heavier. J-Man, I need you to do me a favor. Go over to my pad and get that damn easel out of there, I said to a still ringing receiver. My mouth dry, heart starting doing the Watusi again. I drove a couple of blocks of surface streets to a liquor store. With my half pint of whiskey, I got back on the freeway. A free hand twisting the bag, I broke the seal, then took a couple of swigs before slipping it under the seat. Having never been to this part of the bay, I found myself once more that stranger in a strange land. It always amazed me that the East Bay might as well be staid Kansas compared to the zest of San Francisco poking itself out, wrapped in the free flow of wind and water. Even South San Francisco loses that watery edge, that sense of feeling, that edge of imminent doom that motivates artists or writers to spill their guts on canvas or paper, or just get drunk and stoned in the process of failing to succeed to do so. Crossing the Dumbarton Bridge, last, crossing the bay before heading north, I spark a Marlboro. Raindrops splat on my cheek as I roll down the window. The rush of tires hydroplaning the wet surface calms my nerves. That rush brings to mind this music composer I heard speak recently about realizing how all sounds factored in the creation of his compositions. The sound of moving wheels must be a primal therapeutic. Now I'm beginning to see, to really fully realize a being of itself complete in any pattern of it at work here. The serendipitous accident with the rag may have saved my artistic life. As a painter, I feel drawn to the sweet siren of minimalism, a zen as then now, fullness, a fullness in nothingness to be conceived in having, heaving any thinking out of itself, only itself, as that ultimate fulfillment of my artistic expression of it. It Why, as being conscious, aware of the complete consciousness without informing it, objectifying it now to be only as though as thought, not still it. Alone, y'all alone. A subject in of itself, it. Why, for whatever reason beyond that, I could not wish, or wish to be willing now not to go, to be still myself, even personally, as being it alone indivisible, invisibility, invisible it. Why, thinking of it as that, it would be the final painting, the one to liberate me from a potential for any and all others. That painting of it, why now, as not otherwise. Then what? Thinking I'll drink myself to death? All been done before, man, I tell myself, reaching for another slug off the half pint. Now then, I get a reprieve when that rag slipped out of my hand. It's okay to screw up. It's good to make mistakes, I tell myself. After all is said and done, I've screwed up plenty already. Maybe now it's time to pay attention to it. Out of it. How much do I owe it? Who owes what to whom? Now, can it be that I'm knowing out of it a bad debt or good grace? Then whatever I may think of it now, that damn canvas will be waiting for me then, still there. How would that Zen master approach this problem? Then I remember the story of Wyly'Em, an ignorant, unlettered peasant woodcutter, who, while carrying firewood past an open window of a hermitage, caught a few phrases of the Diamond Sutra from a monk chanting inside. In that fleet passing instant, he got it. It in the blink of an eye, as being complete enlightenment. Illumination zapped him. Wyly'Em became, out of it in that split second, the founder and head Roshi of the Northern School of Instantaneous Zen. Asked later why, he replied, because I do not understand Buddhism. Thus, Wyly'Em realized now, all knowing out of it is in fact or fiction, denying it, to say nothing of worshiping it. For me, the Pasai whole supersonic sound of a voice heard within without ears or waves called me for the first time now then to attention of any now why I witnessing the undercarriage of a 1951 Chevy panel delivery truck passing perilously above. Attention of that I am appearing, it infused itself by that power of ignorance now, knowing, ignoring of it, developing now then a while, a deceitful instantaneous duplicity of itself appearing in that blink of eye out of it and asking of it now. Aka now, knowing out of it memory as though born. Never did I find out what was being delivered other than presenting to me memory, a presence of it or it, why me, in cosmic memory, intelligence, consciousness now to be out in that blink of eye, bodiless still without a head or appendages seeming to move in a memory of it on in sight of its own light. Movement came in a blur, one moment beneath the truck bed passing overhead out in a neighbor's driveway. Page 152. Then a blur, still seeing my mother for the first time ever yet, knowing who she was now, in our own driveway one door down, sweeping at the edge of it. Then a blur till finding my eye on a doctor who examined me shortly after, seemingly oblivious to that supernal light pouring out of me as I of it all. remembering him looking at me, I, observing his white lab coat beneath a bald head, seemed radiating itself of all now informed with words generated, I realized later, by an overarching cosmic memory intelligence consciousness. He looked at me with amazement, I now realize, not in light of that supernal light, but by the fact that I was not only alive, but now then virtually unscathed. It, a real miracle, went without further mention then after that. I am now realizing because my older sister, responsible for my being there in the first place, must continue her life without the weight of that act weighing on her memory. In fact, it's quite likely she had me lay down so the truck would run over me. The incident, never ever mentioned again, remained forgotten by everyone but me till some 5+ decades later, when my father on his deathbed happened to speak of a tricycle that got smashed by the truck after passing over me. Something said half in jest about a perfectly good tricycle, etc. This seemed to confirm my suspicions about my sister putting me there. Though far from being resentful, I would now knowingly thank her for facilitating my inevitable, so rare, full self-realization of it, coming along while living some 70 years later after a full life lived mostly in denial of it. Would but for the fact she's suffering from Alzheimer's, which I can't help wondering if it, an affliction erasing memory, may be a blessing in disguise. A blessing mitigating suffering, the guilt, remembering having tried to kill your own brother. A blessing given in exchange for initiating me on a path to finding myself redeemed then now as being qualified to write these words for the sake of anyone wishing to be willing to realize itself, to now wish to be willing to redeem themselves from death, from dying to be born again and again and again ad infinitum. That in and of itself is always exactly who it is already, and already right now to redeem themselves, finding out it's still them alone, indivisible, invisibility out invisibility, only left out of it alone by their own knowing culpability, ignoring out of it an artificial identity memorized as in a familiar given name, all the while still finding themselves using the pronoun, the prenomen, the prior name that I am, to refer to themselves in first a person, still motionless more at the speed of light in the first place. A singular it why or you or I are I, witness in word merely appearing and now mirrored out in word a while, a blasted cruel cunning con, she us of a wave, our I body, everybody, as being to wish to perceive mas, just us as have blackness now instilling intent to be, a gain of it merely possibilities, potent, potential desire to be out in memory, as being conscious as perceived have lack a while, neither black nor white nor any hue of man, as mind or why memory of me or you. The thing of it is, Hui Nang went on to become sixth ancestor, one of the most celebrated of all Zen masters, where my past seemed almost the mere opposite. It started with success, leading to failure. The question then is failure my ultimate success? As it turned out, yes, because given the choice between wishing to be willing to realize it or now not by that current status quid pro quo, I would likely typically have chosen the latter, likely choosing substituting it myself for an artificial identity of myself as it, as though in a given name for it alone, alone still as being it indivisible, invisibility now, knowing, ignoring itself as though, as thought born to die, through the power of Maya, ignorance, taking on that artificial artifice of it as an identity, now then knowing out of it a being of denial, DNA as twisting tween two of it taken on to my assumed death, only as thought dying, without ever realizing that it's why we're never born to begin with. That damn rag unleashed a nightmare of several dozens of canvases that took over my pad. Color, texture, spatial relations appearing, informing me, thrusting, surging, urging. I painted on surfaces poured, bladed, or abraded with brushstrokes, following solvent trails, patterning that psychedelic paradigm of my chemical-laden mind. To offset this complete abstraction of it, I painted through a bevy of female models who, by the time getting naked at the pad, be occasionally into more intimate activities. Well, after all, painting did make me horny as hell. When needing some bread, I'd go to work at the cannery for a few days drawing on strange companionship. Now then, not wanting to exhibit the paintings, they piled up, filling my pad with a riot of color form. The nudes I knew I could sell, but then risk being rediscovered. Success could lead to my failure. At least that is how I had it reasoned at the time. Probably no one would remember me anyway. My destiny, my karma, spoke of going to India, but that seemed still a few years away. Page 154. India still years away. I carried on enjoying, indulging in my bogey pleasure, seeking self in sex, drugs, and rock and roll, much to the chagrin of that yogi in me. Naturally, in the process of painting nudes, the model, completely disrobed, gave me ample time, posing them with various lighting to find detachment from sexual desire. Learning to combine jazz with LSD, I came to practice tantric sex without orgasm, as I learned from Marianne. It makes one a believer in the once mythic combination of male-female in a singular human being with 4 legs, 4 arms, and 2 heads. It brought to mind the possibility of rapid mobility by rolling over the earth. Unfortunately, as the story goes, these humans, powered by a united male-female genus, became threatening to the gods' superiority. Thus threatened, the gods, they split that singular human in half, knowing most of their energy would be then spent each looking for their other half. With tantric sex, we could achieve a unity unparalleled, reaching a zenith of consciousness. Leastways, I never got any complaints from the other half. The drugs, the finest LSD procured from Wayland's chemist friend I'd met in those days before meeting Marianne, blew my mind to bits. Having run into Wayland when first getting back from Mexico, I found him then wearing casts on both forearms from slashing his wrists out of despair from Evie leaving him to go back to New York City. His failed suicide, no doubt, Wayland being the shameless scamp that he was, done deliberately, cutting down instead of across, more for the sake of eliciting sympathy in the hope of her return than actually trying to off himself. After all, a realized master would naturally realize killing your immortal self, you killing you or being killed by you, doesn't mean we won't try, of course, as it seems we must. Impossible. But he did reconnect me with his chemist. Actually, he left his phone book out one time, and I copped the chemist's number when his back was turned. Managing to talk my way into his select inner sanctum, I got on his list of clients. With the quality he produced, I would bow to the man, no problem. Actually, he took a liking to me. Said I was the only person he felt really appreciated the heights of his product could take one to. The chemist said he continued dealing to Wayland, because he was one of the original flower childs from the early 8 days summer of love. Most of the original flower children, long gone after the summer of 1967, quickly wilted in the blaze of consumer comfort. It had been now several months since the Berkeley riots brought me to meeting Delilah. Her influence, along with the ghosting of Joe and Marianne, accompanying painting drugs with tantric sex, subtly transformed my consciousness until my feminine half came to prominence. My former values and standards shifting, I no longer sought out what I had thought of as beauty. The sweet young nubial girl woman, the ample yet firm bosom, curvaceous yet toned button thighs now no longer captivated my attention. Finding myself disinterested in that young thing paradigm, manifested a fascination with those toothless, wasting, and wrinkled, posing these unwashed street hoi polloi directly under a skylight in my pad. I painted them in harsh light, seeking to exaggerate the grossness of aged flesh. Actually, I owe this perspective to Ivan Albright, an unparalleled artistic genius of 20th century American painters I once met through J.B. Stone, living near Chicago. He amazed me so much that meeting JFK with all his wealth and prestige took a second chair to him. Ivan, or I.A. as I came to know him, became my artistic guru, the most important art influence at that time on my life. Yet few people outside Chicago even knew who he was. Anyone can see his work by watching The Portrait of Dorian Gray, the film version. The painting shown at the very end of the film exhibiting the decay, the total putrid, bloody, rotten, pustulant debauchery of Dorian's syphilitic, murderous, depraved descent to madness, the brilliant work of I.A., all caught by his genius with the detachment of a Zen monk, whereas I could naturally take advantage of a childlike detachment, painting from age 3 to 7 before being fully self-conscious, seeing things in a personal, sentimental way. Once falling under the spell, understanding the spell at age 7, I then now no longer found that detachment needed to pursue I.A.'s sui generis way of attaining a complete disinterest, of a compassion without pity, anguish without agony, beauty without romanticism, passion without a postured dispassion. Once my memory dominated my seeing like a junkyard dog nipping at your heels, I can be it only looking, thinking at it. Once my self-concept crystallized from merely appearing it to appearing to look at it, well, I turned into just another clueless dork with a bad complexion. But my prior accomplishments, a celebrated matter of record, took a decade to peter out. The thing I most wanted now, not to be recognized. This obscurity left me free, unrecognized, unrecognizable to myself in words like eyes, nose, lips, etc., free to work in different styles as a continuing experiment. Failure then became success now. Free at any time now to safely return anonymous to my trade of street portraiture, I felt unencumbered by aspirations from painting. Page 156. Working strictly without personal convictions, my journey now moved toward a dissolution as being convinced of appearing out of it in the first place. Once lost by appearing to appear again and again out of it from age 8 to the present now, then I sought to find myself, importance disappearing once more in light of the D-arc light-ass parking jewel in the lotus, the jewel that shatters in captivation of a personal self-conscious typical at age 7. All I know is now having a shitload of canvases cluttering up my crib. Working on Sadie, the bag lady in the IA tradition, I find her skin a wonderful melange of sags, bags, broken veins full of blotches, bloat, and pucker. The thing of it is, I'm no longer horny. My lust for the flesh is well tempered with studying its ultimate foregone reality. What is that smell? Jean Claude asked, stepping into my pad. It's been some months since he's been around. From the salesgirls at his boutique, I'd heard that he'd been out of town on business. Gone a while, he is now shocked to find my pad crammed with canvases. Last time he'd been here, there was only the lonely old easel with a single blank canvas sitting forlornly in the corner of the room. It's the smell of booze and body odor mixed with turpentine linseed oil, I reply while putting finishing touches on the painting of Sadie in a second-hand, slightly seedy, faded evening gown, my tribute to I.A. Sadie, a very corpulent 60-ish, her graying flesh rife with sag and stretch marks lining her leathery face, plunging running down a neckline like a wasteland incised with wind and water erosion, sits sadly silent. The harsh overhead lighting emphasizes the seams of a life lived street hard, exposed to all the weathered, withering elements of exploitation, misery, or corrosive relationships. Jean Claude, caught stupefied, remains silent for a long moment. He's seen enough of the bevy of svelte young nymphs that typically orbit my world. The look on his face tells me he thinks I've lost my mind. He's right. Losing the judgmental mind, I found a kindred to I.A.'s fascination with the grotesque. But then Jean Claude, looking around, starts examining some of the other canvases crowding walls, propped up on chairs and stacked in every niche and corner. His eyes fall on the earlier voluptuous nudes, along with minimalist abstracts and landscapes I painted from the roof in earlier late light. Only a block from the bay, the massive sailboats berthed in the marina silhouette against brilliant sunsets or gray, foggy sunrisings. But most rewarding for me, a series of surrealist fantasy paintings capturing lurid lyrical imagery generated by the LSD. These, worth more than all the rest, stopped him in his tracks. I'll buy them, Jean Claude said after an hour of perusing the canvases, holding different ones in different light. All of them? I asked incredulously. Well, I feel it's only fair to take them all, even though some appeal less somehow than others, he said, wrinkling his nose at the grotesque bag woman series. One could almost smell the layers of a stale life seeping through emaciated or bloated bodies, oozing sweat excretions of various rancid fluids. I don't even want to know what kind of money laundering scheme you got going. I'm signing them R. Slate, one of my alter egos, so they won't have any value accruing from past fame, I replied, pouring a couple glasses from the bottle of whiskey Jean Claude had brought tucked under his arm. Sadie, gingerly getting to her feet, grabs her coat with a long look at the bottle. Pulling a wad of bills from my pocket, I usher her to the door. Giving her the gaiter with a gentle hug, I kissed the top of her head, reeking of stale tobacco. Watching her waddle off, still wearing the tattered evening gown, flapping beneath her coat, I'm struck with the heaviness of a sad life lived, abandoned of all hope of ever making it to the ball. You don't believe I'm doing this purely to promote art and cultural exchange? He offered with a sly gleam in his eye. You know, looking at these paintings, I feel something cracked open within you. Something fated to happen as a karma going way back to that time you got run over, he asked. Jean Claude knew my entire story. He'd even checked it out in public record of the time. No doubt I've been under the influence of an unseen power ever since I know more of it will reveal itself. I feel it coming from the depths of my memory to swallow me black into the invisibility of me being still it, I said, knocking back the tumbler of whiskey. This foreboding would turn out to be right there, under my radar, above as below it. The money from the sale of my paintings I imagined taking me to India. Once there, I conceived spending several years studying with a great master teacher who, admittedly at the time, I'd yet to meet.